The Australian bark hut, or slab hut, was an essential form of shelter for many during the early years of settler history. Often resources were scarce, and people had to use what was around them to build their homes. The bark from many native species of trees were often used to build homes by using an axe to peel large sheets, or slabs, of bark off a tree. Settlers could use this as walls and roofing. This was a form of shelter that was copied from our indigenous folk, who would often make their shelters, or gunyahs, from sheets of bark. Some of the structures that settlers built were rather grand in vision, requiring a certain level of work and building skills. But other bark buildings were whipped up quickly, whether as an outhouse or temporary shelter from the elements for wandering bushmen. The humpy was a last resort for many who had fallen on hard times. And it is this more rudimentary type of shelter that I've been inspired to try and build, in my own way and style, to use as a camping shelter here on the farm. So I'm setting off to learn more about the Aussie bark hut and how I can make my own version of this iconic Australian bush shelter. Alright, so we're here at Coal Creek, which is a old historic mining town up in Currambara, and I've come here just to have a look at some of the old bark huts here and how they would have built the old original huts that they stayed in. And you know, I just wanted to get a bit of an idea. I love the style of the shingles, like tiles on the roof made from bark or wood, and it's just given me some inspiration to make a little bark hut or a bark humpty of my own. So probably won't make something as grand as this, probably something a little bit smaller, more like a humpy, but yeah, it's just great to get here and get some inspiration from the old fellas and how they did it. G'day everyone, I'm here at this little site down the back property where I've built little shelters before. Mostly this is where I've set up my oilskin tarp shelter, and this is the old frame to it. So this is the area where I want to build this bark hut, this traditional Australian type of bark hut. So I'm going to tear down this, and then I also have a couple of big logs here that I've brought down. These are going to be the corner posts basically. And there's a bit of history to these logs. These logs were sourced from this local area for the local farmland here, and I think some of these logs that used to be part of old sheds here on the farm, we've dated back to the 1940s. So yeah, a bit of history to them. Now, I did bring them down via the primitive method of a tractor with forklifts, because they're just bloody heavy. So yeah, I just wanted to bring them down like that, get them here so they're ready, so I can now build everything by hand. So yeah, I'm going to get stuck into building this hut now, and the first thing I have to do is tear this down. So I thought I'd just show you some of the tools that I'm going to be using for this job. And these are tools that more or less you could find similar style tools in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And this is what I'm going to use for doing all my building. So I have a tin full of old rusty nails. So I didn't want to use brand new nails for this job. I thought I'd actually collect old nails that we have on the farm here. So if I want to use some nails, I'll use that. Of course, got to have a good knife. This is the Swagman's Companion. I'll be using that with me. I also have a bit of wire, which I could use. Now I made this little bush saw. I don't know if they'd have anything like this, but it was a beautiful bit of eucalyptus. Have a look at this, that was shaped in a great way, and I've always thought that would make a really cool saw. So I put a blade on there, and yeah, hopefully I can cut through some timber with that. We'll see how we go. I'll also be using a modern hoe, to do the digging. So big metal crowbar. I have my old farm axe. Now it's a pretty horrible axe in regards to the handle. Look at it, it's got heaps of splinters and I need a new handle for it, but the actual axe itself is nice and sharp, so I'll be using that. And then when I am using that equipment, I will probably just chuck on some leather gloves, bit of modern stuff just to keep the hands nice and protected. And there you go, that's what I'm going to be using. I reckon. 3, 4. I kind of realised how deep these holes have to be to make it secure, so I went and got a shovel. Surely they had shovels back in the day. Awesome. Alright, so basically this is too tall, this is too high. I should have cut them all to size beforehand. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to use a chainsaw just to lob the top off them. Yes, it's kind of funny, rip into me in the comments. This is not a primitive bushcraft channel. I just like experimenting and trying to come up with old little huts and little shelters and things like that, but I'm quite happy to use some modern equipment, just like I used the tractor to bring all this stuff down here. I'm quite happy to use modern equipment here and there, but I swear just for these corner posts will be the only time I'll be using the chainsaw. So oh yeah, nice hard ground. I'm sweating. Alright, so the idea is to run poles down that way. Obviously it's slanted like that, so the rain's going to run off from there. And I've got to try and find things as flat as possible. And then I'm going to have rafters kind of go across it so I can lay the bark on top there, which will be the roofing. I originally planned to use eucalyptus branches as rafters, but I was not happy with the strength of these poles. So here on the property we have a bunch of old recycled wood which came off old farm sheds. Some of this wood we estimate to have been around since the 1940s and most likely harvested from the property. I will be using this for the rafters. Now, I wasn't happy with the original rafters, logs that I put up there. They just felt very weak. Considering I'm going to be laying quite a lot of bark on there and it could get heavy, I decided to take them all down. And instead, I replaced them with some very thick, strong, long pieces of wood that I can use as rafters up there on the top of the bark hut. So I put the rafters up, secured them all. That took quite a bit of job. Now again, I just want to stress here, I'm not a builder. I've done a little bit of stuff. I built a few sheds, I helped build a few sheds, so I kind of have a rough idea of what I could do, but this is a pretty rough job. This is a pretty slapped on job basically, and you know, I guess that could have been like what it was like for a lot of the old bushmen back in the day as well. Those guys who didn't actually have the full knowledge on how to, you know, engineer and build a stable house. But I mean, it's feeling pretty solid, and I'll show you what I've done over here. I wanted to create, I don't know if I'll do it right now or if I'll do it a bit later at another time, but I want to create a fireplace using tin. So I've measured out a spot. This is about as big as area I need for a fireplace. And then I've put this other pole in here so I can secure panels along here, maybe have a window over here, and then all this area here can be tin, and I can create a bit of a fireplace. So yeah, if it's raining outside, I can shelter in the bark hut, and I can have a little fire here on the inside as well. So yeah, I'm getting there. Now it's all about doing the roof and getting and collecting all the bark that I can to be able to lay it across this roof. So I'm looking for big sheets of bark that I can take off trees to use as like tilings for the roof. Now, bark is important to a tree, and you've probably heard the term ring barking before. Ring barking is basically when you remove the bark in a full 360-degree circle around a tree. It basically means it can't bring the water up from the roots into the tree often dies. But you can cut off sections of bark off a tree and it heals, and it's quite okay. So that's what I'll be doing. I'm just going to be cutting off sections of bark off trees. So there's this old beauty here. I reckon I could probably get something off this. Oh, that's a beauty. Gee, look at the spiders in there. I should be able to get off a big sheet. Let's try and support it. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a good tile right there. That's one big twig right there. Bloody fantastic that is. Whoa, big huntsman. I was wondering when I'd come across a huntsman. So as you can see, I definitely have enough bark to get started. That's a lot of weight there, so I'm really glad that I changed the rafters and made something a bit more solid. Now it's going to be about creating a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, and to lay it out, you're going to lay out from the back first, and then you keep layering on top like that so the water will naturally run down it. Whether this is going to be waterproof or not, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a job to get this all up there and secure it on top, but I've got to get into it. Now what's obvious about this is it's not going to be rainproof. Not yet anyway. Very much shade proof. It's like 30 degrees today and I'm under there and it's really nice shade, but when the storm comes through, that's not going to keep me dry. So my thoughts, I'm going to gather as much candle bark or like that kind of ribbon bark as I can and just kind of lay it on like kind of thatching. So starting from the back up, and then I'm going to lay cross beams down of tea tree to just hold that ribbon bark down. And you know, it might need repairs and patching up after big storms, but I think that's probably going to be the best bet. Now that I've got this base layer on of this thick heavy bark, I'm going to fill in all the gaps.
Bark hut roofings were mostly slabs of bark tiled on each other over here in the south. But in my research, I did find that up in northern parts of Australia, thatching was often used on bark huts for the roofing. This was mostly grass thatching, but I did come across some old photos of what looked like bark thatching, which gave me some inspiration.
This stuff is ribbon bark, or candle bark, and I'm going to grab a bunch of this stuff to use as thatching on the top. It's nice and lightweight, but with enough of it you can make something waterproof. So layering from the back up to the front. Alright, there's the thatching done on my bark hut. Last thing to do is I've got a couple of these tea tree sticks, and I'll just brace that down with wire just so I can hold all this thatching down in case it gets windy. I've got about 6 of them that I'm going to do across here. Well, there she is, the old bark hut. Look, it'll give protection from a drizzle. It'll give protection from, you know, a bit of a steady rain. From a big downpour, she's going to be leaky. So yeah, look, I'm not planning to live in here, but this will be my little shelter to camp in and tell stories in. So I'm happy with that. I tell you what, it was a lot of work. So, geez, the old fellas had to do a lot of work just to make something livable back in the day. But I've got the bark hut, I've got the bark roofing, so it'll probably just be timber slates for the sides, and that'll be the next day because I'm buggered. I'm gonna go have a drink. Beautiful sheet of bark right here. Now the idea is I won't be doing this around the whole tree because again I don't want to damage the tree. So just taking off a sheet of bark like that, that's fine. That's not going to do anything to tree. Now I saw this bit of bark here the other day and look how high it goes up. That there will cover a lot of space of wall, so I'm going to try my best to get that off. That was a very good piece. Beautiful. And though it's not very 1800s, I might still lay down a bit of carpet in here. Why not? And there's my seat. The bark hut. Well, that was quite a build. Pretty exhausted after that, so I think I've earned myself a bit of whiskey and a pipe. Oh yeah. So some things about this build, some reflections. Yeah, look, it's not a permanent type of bark house that the old settlers would have built for themselves if they were living somewhere. I mean, it's pretty breezy and it'll be pretty leaky when the rain comes in, but it's nice just to whip like up a little humpy like this. There could be a little hideout in the bush, you know, like kind of a camp that they'd set up if they were out in the bush and they were, you know, logging trees. They might set something like this up, something that's not so permanent, not like the homestead that they could have, you know, camped out in if they were going out for a week or something like that logging. And that's the whole aim with this thing here. It's not to make a permanent type of bark house. Now, what I will do is I'm going to use this for a bit of a camp. I want to come down here and camp. I want to test it in the rain. But then what I eventually will do is make something a bit more permanent here, make a permanent type of hut, probably using wooden slats and tin roof, and actually build a tin fireplace as well. That's the next plan for this thing here, but for now I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved. Now, I've got a book here called Folklore of Australia, and in it is a famous poem about a bark hut that I wouldn't mind reading to you. And this poem has actually been recorded by multiple Australian artists into songs, and a particular favourite of mine is by a lady called Marion Henderson. So check out her version of the old bark hut. But I want to read some of it to you now. My name is Bob the Swagman, and I'll have you understand. I've had lots of ups and downs while travelling through the land. I once was fairly well to do, but now it's all gone fut. And I'm forced to go on rations in an old bark hut. 10 pound of beef, 10 pound of flour, some sugar and some tea. That's all they feed a hungry man until the 7th day. Unless you're mighty sparing, boys, you'll go with a hungry gut. That's one of the great misfortunes in an old bark hut. The bucket I wash my feet in has to cook my tea and stew. They'd say I was getting mighty flash if I should ask for two. The table's just a sheet of bark, God knows when it was cut. It was blown from off the rafters of the old bark hut. Oh, stormy days the rain comes in just like a perfect flood, especially through the big round hole where once the table stood. It leaves me not a single place where I can lay me nut, for the rain is sure to find me in the old bark hut. Of furniture there's no such thing was ever in the place except the chair I sit upon, and that's an old gin case. I've a billy and a pint pot and a broken handle cup, and they all adorn the table in the old bark hut. In summer when the weather's warm, the hut is nice and cool. You'll find the gentle breeze blowing in through every hole. You can leave the old door open or you can leave it shut. There's no fear of suffocation in the old bark hut. Besides the fire, I lay me down wrapped up in 2 old rugs. It doesn't make for comfort, for it seems to lure the bugs. And all I've got for company, me poor old collie pup, so I use her for a pillow in the old bark hut. And now I've sung me little song as nicely as I could. I hope the ladies present don't think my language rude, and all you boys and girls around me growing up, remember Bob the Swagman in his old bark hut. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Stay tuned for the next one where I'm going to camp down here with my Kelpie in the rain. That should be a good one.